Okay, like this I can shove. I didn't have many hands to shove even if I wanted to before. And that's kind of why I figured limping is a little bit strange unless he's trying to play a level ahead of me. It's like, haha, you'll never think I'll limp an ace. But no, I still think he'll limp some aces occasionally. Again, fairly dry board, so I'm betting 1/3. And again, just like in the other king example, where it's almost the same texture, it was like Jack 8x, but I have a backdoor, so that's always nice. That makes me able to call. And a very small bet. He hasn't check raised, I think, this game until now and one time before, so I am gonna give it up. If I had a backdoor draw actually hit there, like you know, diamond, then sure, I would have continued for that kind of small bet. Oh, is he saying 1200s too? Huh. Okay, and we again have a spot like this, so I could be just shoving on him, but even though this doesn't play great, I kind of want to be able to call. So yeah, if I just frequently raise his limps to, let's say, 80 with just hands that play well, like Jack 10 suited, Queen 9 suited, whatnot, but that don't really go great in all-ins, I think he can easily catch on. So I will have to be raising with some strong but fairly hard to play hands. I'll have to see if it's really worth the fold for hands like Deuce 9, because he's not calling every hand or anything, so he's playing somewhat passive, though I wouldn't really call it passive yet, because I don't know how his hands were, and the sample is short. It's a small sample, so there's no reason to make huge judgments based on that. Some people really want to adjust immediately all the time. It's like, oh, I saw him raise 3 times in a row, so I'm gonna assume he's raising 75% or whatnot. But I prefer to revert to just a very solid style when I don't have information. I think it gets you into less trouble. While, of course, I guess if your reads are just incredibly spot on and you adjust super fast, maybe you have a higher long-term profit, but I'm not yet confident enough, especially after my hiatus, to be able to pull that off and just instantly adjust. And I think it's just risky in general. And even if they do something fairly exploitable, if you play a solid style that's, okay, we don't really know what game theory optimal is, but something that's more likely to be closer to that, then they will be exploiting themselves if they have these huge gaps in their ranges. Okay, so here raising is actually pretty reasonable too. And I really want to shove over him if he bets, but I think it's kind of silly at the same time, because what am I really doing this with? It would have to be very texture dependent, where on monotone boards I would shove, let's say, top pair and strong draws. And then, of course, there aren't that many bluffs if you're using such a huge bet size, because the larger bet size would make you know, bluffing with very low equity hands quite unfavorable. So that's why I would think maybe a smaller raise is good, but I guess I'll just have to default to a kind of binary strategy there and either check some of the more mediocre hands and call, or shove the strong ones, or in the other hand, on the other hand, if I want to bluff, maybe just bet out. I don't know though. Okay, open shoves. Kind of stumbled over my words there. Haven't been doing videos much, as I'm sure you realize. Okay, and this will be pretty good for my limping range, because I will be dominating at least one of the kickers almost every time if he shoves. And even if he doesn't shove, of course, playing post flop with a high pocket pair, that's pretty nice. But yeah, you do see that he's rematching, so that's how I remember him. He's a player that isn't afraid to fight anybody really, so that's refreshing, I guess. I think he really should be 3-betting me a lot more. I've been opening still probably around like 90%-ish at the higher stack depth. I feel like I shouldn't be getting away with that objectively. Again, somewhat drawy board, and so I'm using the half pot bet size. Okay, and he leads, but even though it's kind of a shitty spot, I feel like I should call. Now, if he bets here again, I will have to fold, because even his bluffs, a lot of the draws got there, and the 4 is very reasonable for him to just call. If he had a 7, I think he could quite reasonably just shove on me, so yeah, the high flush draw, fairly high flush draw, is what really prompted me to call the turn, despite the larger sizing. And so far I also haven't had a non-all-in 3-bet size, so I might want to implement that, but on the other hand, that kind of messes with your ranges too. It's like, oh, he's doing a non-all-in size. Now he has, let's say, 9s plus ace, 8 suited or ace 9 off plus, etc. So, you know, a lot of people have ranges like that and then just random bluffs like 5-3 off. And you can definitely balance that, but it does make it a lot harder when you're shoving all in, because then they're like, oh, okay, ace deuce to ace 6 off or whatever, and pocket pairs up to 5s, 6s maybe. So, yeah, just in general, like people play those 3-betting ranges in different ways, and they're not all the same, but it's always tougher to balance multiple ranges. That's why if you're, let's say, building a poker bot or chess engine or whatever, you try to focus on situations where you minimize the amount of variables you have to deal with while maximizing the profit or performance as far as the chess engine goes. Yeah, I'll just call because it's good enough to raise, but I just haven't had the dynamic to be check raising weak hands too much. It's not a spot where, you know, the turn is not great for him to bluff, so this is actually pretty shitty. 7-8 is one of the hands he could just have had, and just yeah, even something like deuce 3 potentially, deuce 3 suited especially. He doesn't even, yeah. I mean, apart from 10-8, is there really that much? I do block these 3, so I think it's just too good to... Man, it's really frustrating because I don't know. I think I'm beat most of the time, but probably still worth the call. Yeah, well. That's what you get for being rusty and thinking too long. I probably would have called, but it's a really hesitant call. At least as far as the games were when I last played, people didn't generally go in 3-barrel a ton when there weren't even overcards or anything like that, and I could actually legitimately have pretty strong hands too. Like, there's no reason for me to have less of a chance of straight there than him. It's not like I'm 3-betting all 7-8 suited or 7-8, so... Yeah, in terms of ranges, basically, he shouldn't think that my range is so weak. Even the call, yeah, I called, that makes it seem weaker, but it could also be a trap like 7-8. Anyway, it's pretty fun to get back into the game, see how a good player thinks, and how I managed to deal with it. This was actually candidate for a 1/3 bet. I guess I just don't have it fully defined yet. And that's probably good too. Like, you don't always want to do the same thing. But you don't want to have... Yeah, I'm just going to give up. You don't want to have a situation where you're basically betting larger if you're good hands and just betting 1/3 of bluffs. So that's the, I guess, difficult line to walk without being a computer, because you can't actually fully account for every situation. He has showdown value here, and I'm gonna lose, but I just don't think he would fold 9-4 or, you know, ace x if he even has that sometimes. And here I would be shoving on him if he min raised, or if he limped. It's just too shallow to do a non-all-in one. And this actually plays pretty well because the jack can create a lot of straight opportunities. And yeah, you have overcards to a lot of flops. So I feel like limping is pretty good just to balance the range. Like right here, I have a gut shot. I have 2 overcards to the 10. He almost never has a king there. Not only because there are 2 on the board, but also because those kings tend to shove on limps. Okay, and I would be curious how he reacts to just a 2x of his limp, because that would be a really cheap steal if he ever folds. It's a bit of a stupid spot because he can have more kings than me, but yeah, I will just 2x it. See how he reacts. If he shoves, it's fine. If it doesn't, it's fine. But I don't think he can just call with random air as much. And I basically have air here, and I'm probably not getting the showdown even if I have the best hand. Another way of playing it is, of course, just to call. Folding is alright as well. But people limp stab so much that sometimes just 2xing their stabs will net you a lot of folds. Okay, and pocket fives would not play great post flop, but has pretty good equity versus almost anything, so there we go, simple decision. And maybe we'll have a reverse ace-9 suited versus jacks. No, he just checks, but he thinks a long time, like, oh yeah, I've got aces, I'm really not sure, maybe I want to trap you even more, but I don't really think so. Again, this is a spot where my range will have more kings than him. A whole lot more. I don't even know if he would have more than king deuce, king 3 here. And so I can pretty comfortably value bet here. And yeah, we'll go on the bigger side just because it does seem more credible as a bluff. And yeah, maybe it's a little bit overkill, I don't know. But I feel like if I am bluffing here, I normally would want to go a little bigger too, just because I want him to have the fear that, you know, I hit a 10 or whatever as well. And straight is not relevant because he's not going to have ace jack. So, okay, he had the king. That's kind of odd. I really thought he would just shove over that. And the queen was not a threat for the simple reason that he called the flop. And so unless he had just a queen that could have a backdoor flush draw and the gut shot on the turn, there really wouldn't be a situation where the queen is a problem. And like I mentioned, ace jack, that kind of straight, he would just not have. So yeah, I value owned myself a bit versus the king, but the kings are a smaller part of his range. Okay, and yeah, I will call 2 overs, backdoor flush draw. And I'll probably be man, this is so annoying. Like he used the size that is just a bit too big. But I'll call. Just okay. Man, the 5 pairs too. Yeah, okay, never mind. I was hoping to be able to donk some of these. Yeah, like I really thought he would have kind of a few too many buffs there, and then allow me to take it away. So yeah, I'm thinking back about the jacks versus king 6 off. I still think value betting there is best, just because, especially if you're playing versus a human, they'll think you're not doing that for 5 or 7, and you probably aren't really. So they'll be more prone to make a cure call, and I do beat essentially every hand except probably king 6 off and lower for his range, because I think the reason he took so long before checking was that he's really thinking, man, maybe I should just shove here. So that's probably the border of his check down hands. And I think most people are just shoving that. It's probably the best way to play it. The only way I would possibly play that differently, I guess, is the river bet, but I still think it's completely correct versus a normal player. Definitely a candidate to limp as well. And it's essentially a flip with him having a small edge. Now a large edge.